The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. Let's talk about it. 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 On the video.
Hello, hello, hello. I am so excited this evening. I have my cousin, Charles Tyler Sr., Esquire, Dr. Charles Tyler Sr., and I am just elated that he is here with me. Let me pull him up. Hello, 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 Dr. Charles Tyler Sr. How you doing?
Good. Good to be with you this evening.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. I'm going to share a little bit about you and then we're going to talk about some things. Charles Tyler Sr. received his PhD in Instructional Management and Leadership from Robert Morris University in Pittsburgh, PA, a Doctor of Ministry degree from the United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio. He received his Juris Doctor from the University of Akron School of Law. He also received his master's in public administration and his master's in education administration from the University of Akron. He received a certificate in theology and ministry from Princeton University. He is admitted to practice law in the state of Ohio, the United States District Court for the Northern District of Ohio, the United States District Court of the Southern District of Ohio, and the United States District Court for the Colorado District. In addition to his law degree, he holds certificates in general and divorce mediation from Northwestern University and the University of Akron. He is the managing attorney at the law office of Charles Tyler Sr. and has served as a Summit County prosecutor and has worked as an insurance defense attorney for State Auto Insurance Company. His dissertation, The Impact of Federal Legislation on Vanquishing the Digital Divide in High versus Low Poverty Schools, was supervised by Lawrence Tomei, PhD. Oh my God. I know people are hearing this. And yes, this is a well educated man. But not only is he educated, but he is humble and he is a man of God who puts forth every effort to make a difference in people's lives. And that's what we're going to be talking about. And Maddie, she says, hello, Maddie. I'm so glad you're on here. Well, is he single or what? No, he's not single. He has a wife and three children, three beautiful children, and a beautiful wife who is a school teacher in Akron Public Schools. And he's going to talk more about his family because that's what we're going to be talking about today is how do we empower families. And I think what Charles has done with his family is a perfect example of how to do that. And so I am just excited. And I said, because we're also going to be talking about justice and that kind of stuff, I wanted to start with a poem that I had indicated I was going to share. So I would normally ask somebody to give me a beat, but since I know you don't do beats, I'm just going to ask you to kind of clap your hands and be with me as I do this poem, okay? All right, so here we go. Martin Luther King had the right state of mind, reaching and teaching of all kind. He had a dream to yet come to pass, for love and peace to come and to last. More than 50 years since his life has gone by, we've made many, yet far too little strides. There's not much left of what he called black pride. We still have black on black crime. Still too many brothers and sisters doing time. Young people today have little to say about the history of the price Martin came to pay. Wake up! We've been sleeping too long. It's time we begin to right what's wrong. We're still at the bottom of the totem pole while foreigners come, seek, and find gold. Wake up, sleeping giants, open your minds. We must realize we don't have much time. We don't have much time. We don't have much time. Now, I wanted to share that because we're going to be talking about justice. We're going to be talking about families. We're going to be talking about empowerment. But before we do, and let's see, we have new comments here. Hey, y'all. Hey, Dar. Dar's on. Hello, Dar. How you doing? Glad to see you. And, okay, so, Charles, first, I'd like for you to talk about and share a little bit about your family. I talked about your education and all of your accolades in terms of all the things that you've done educationally, but I know family is so important to you. So I'd like for you to share more about your family.
Yeah, so our family, as you can tell, we believe that educational excellence is a great investment. Our oldest son attends school at Stark State here in Akron, and our youngest, which is 17, she's at the University of Akron Early College. In May, she'll get her associate's degree and her high school diploma. And then our 19-year-old, our middle child, is attending the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. He will receive his bachelor's in May.
Okay.
All of them have their own plans. Morgan wants to be a medical doctor. Aaron wants to go on and get a master's and PhD and teach criminal justice. Charles wants to be a teacher. So they all have their own paths, and we just support them in what they want to do.
That's awesome. And of course, your wife, Shannon, she's also an educator.
Correct.
And she works with you with some of the nonprofit things that you're doing as well, correct?
Correct. And then there are times when they all come to the office and chip in, helping at the office as well.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. Well, I'm telling you, I really want you to kind of share with our audience, how do you see the law of the land right now? And before we do that, I do want to let Georgians know that early voting, as you probably know, has already started. And it's on Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on October 18th through the 22nd. That's passed. And from this week, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And you can check your local areas in Georgia to determine where you would go. But please register, please vote, rather. Registration is over. Please vote. It's critical that we do that, especially given what's happening to try to suppress our vote. So please vote. Okay, so Charles, I'm going to leave it up to you to kind of talk about your mission, your vision, and what it is that you're doing to impact families and lives.
Well, I am a family practice attorney where I spend most of my time doing divorce, custody, grandparents' right, child support. I spent a great deal of time working for the Ohio Domestic Violence Network, where I represent survivors, helping them get civil protection orders, custody, divorces, coming out of pretty bad situations. October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So
yes.
we want to remind survivors, if you're in bad situations, please get out, call, get help. Don't take any chances. Too many wonderful people lives end too soon because they stay in bad situations. In addition, I do some criminal defense work, and that's because so many of our young people are caught in such an unjust system. So it's important we have representation in all facets of the legal system. I want to say tonight that John Henrik Clarke once said that powerful people never educate those whom they oppress how to take that power away. It is absolutely important, as Vera's already said, that we participate in our election process. The reason they work so hard to try to suppress our vote is because they know that we have power to make things happen. It's no secret that Joe Biden is in the White House tonight because of the African American community and specifically African American women. So we want to encourage you to make sure that you cast your votes. There is no such thing as an off year election. Every election is important and we must participate. I work in the legal system, and you cannot imagine how the legal system is heavily impacted by voter participation. First of all, judges are elected. So when we don't vote, we have people sitting on the bench who may not be able to identify with our people or our cause. We have people sitting on the bench who's impacted by their own unconscious and sometimes conscious bias. They make decisions based on how they feel about us or what they think about us. I was reading an article just the other day that said that most white Americans believe that 5-year-old black girls appear older and they need less nurturing.
Oh my God.
Live in a situation that the pool of jurors are dependent on the voter registration list. So if we're not registered, then we're not selected to be potential jurors. And then the other thing, there are times that we're selected and we don't follow through. We have to follow through. Our people, the community is dependent on us to be a part of every process of our legal system. There was an article in our local paper talking about Ohio, I think the top 5 or 10 places for crime, and Cleveland is one, Akron, Columbus. Many of the places where our people live are under siege because of violence. There was an article and an interview today with the superintendent of Akron Public Schools that talked about the number of fights and things they've had already this school year. We have to do a better job of instilling greatness in our young people. We have to let them know they are somebody without fighting, without killing, without shooting. We have so much work to do. And one of the things that bothers me, oftentimes the work that our community-based organizations are doing seem to forget about the people that they say they want to help. Think about it. When was the last time you went to one of the so-called community dinners for 125, and how many poor black people did you see there? How could they even attend? Oftentimes the people that we say that we're working for, that we're fighting for, we do things without them in mind. Some of the things that we're doing, they're not helping them at all. So we have to do a better job of instilling greatness, not in just the haves, but the have-nots. You know, we talk about white privilege, but the truth of the matter, there's also this thing called black privilege. Many of us, because of our education, our zip code, our bank accounts, we forget about the masses. And if we don't forget about them, we don't do all we can to pull them up. We kind of silently say they got to pull themselves up by their own bootstrap. And that's not how it's supposed to be, because every one of us who so-called made it to a certain level, we are here standing on the shoulders and backs. If it had not been for other people, Fannie Lou Hamer and others, we wouldn't have the opportunities that we have today. So we have to get back to helping one another.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, I have a program called Instilling Greatness in myself and my children. And that is so true what you're saying. And oftentimes these nonprofit organizations, the reason that they have the high ticket programs is so that they can generate the monies that they need to service, of course, their people. But the question is, are they really serving the majority of those they say they need to serve? What's your thought on that?
Well, I believe that many times they have good intentions, but they miss the mark. I don't understand having organizations designed to help poor people, but there's no poor people at the table. No poor people on the board of directors. Um, um, Many of those people on boards, they don't go in poor communities. So how is it that you create a program or a project without the people in mind? I think it's important that people in the community begin to represent themselves. Stop allowing the masses. Stop allowing the masters to tell us who our leaders should be. It's time that we select our own leaders, and once we select them, then we elect them on the ballot.
Yes, and let me respond to some of our listening audience. First, Dar said, "Great words, Shar." Maddie just sent the show to Rhonda's inbox because her daughter was a victim of domestic violence. Thank you, Maddie, for doing that. And Dar, she says, and this is so true, love my family. Charles Tyler Sr. is an excellent example of a God fearing, well balanced man who supports his family thoroughly. Yes, yes. And I know there may be things and times that he's done things that nobody knew anything about. So it's not to boast or to brag, but to do God's work and to be a servant. And that's what he is. And we thank you for that. And so, oh, she is watching. Okay. Well, Rhonda, speak, speak, speak. And so let's talk a little. Domestic violence is a major issue, and it is Domestic Violence Month. And I know we got a lot of things to talk about, but I want to circle back around to that because, as you know, I was also a victim of domestic violence. I thank God that I was able to recognize that my ex-husband, I couldn't raise my son in that environment. I just could not. And so when he attacked me in front of my son, when my son was 3 months old, I knew then that I can't stay here. I am not going to allow my son to be subjected to that violence. And I recognize that so many women, they stay in these situations. And one of the things that they say is that they're in the situation because of their children, when in actuality, that's the main reason why they need to get out. Talk to me about that, Charles.
Well, I'll start where you left off. In fact, I'm attending a workshop tomorrow talking about the economics of domestic violence. And when those women saying that's why they're still there, it's not that they don't love their children, but the abuser controls the money.
Right.
Controls how they eat, controls how the bills are paid. So when you hear women say that, they're meaning that if they could afford to leave without harming their children, they would. They're concerned about how little Johnny's going to eat.
But
Um,
and
the other thing, I was just in Florida 2 weeks ago for a family law conference down at Disney, and I was shocked. There was psychiatrists, psychologists, there was lawyers, so many people there, and I learned that across the United States of America, in family law, when there's divorce and custody, where women claim domestic violence or abuse, in 59% of those cases, the judge gives the children to the abuser. So there are a lot of women who are afraid to even talk about domestic violence in court because the court kind of turns against them. Then I learned that if the abuser, normally it's dad, if he claims that mom is trying to alienate the children from him, then in about 60% of those cases, the court end up giving the child to the abuser.
and
So
you
women are kind of in a bad fix sometimes. They need to tell their story, but sometimes telling their story costs them.
but that's where, in my opinion, and I understand what you're saying, but let's not negate the fact that there are cases where men are abused as well. And that was one of the points that I was in a clubhouse room, as a matter of fact, and we were talking about that. And there are men that are abused who stay silent as well. But where women are concerned, I think, and having I when I went into my marriage, I had confidence. I was, I had worked on myself so that I could be a confident person full of self-esteem and all that stuff. And within that 3-year marriage, I lost all of that. And so one of the reasons that the fear exists where women are concerned, not only the ramifications of possibly having the abuser get custody of the children, but also they lose that self esteem and that confidence and think that there is no other way. When in actuality, getting out of that situation, even if we struggle, and I know about struggle, even if we struggle in the midst, the impact that abuse has on our children can be sustaining and lasting throughout adulthood. And so, which a lot of people are having issues because of staying in those kinds of situations legally. And I understand what you're saying. So before I even finish or go on, I do want to acknowledge our guests that are here, Darlene. All right. And let me move down. Oh, she said Kent State was her alma mater. She said that you should talk to Rhonda Mackey because of her daughter. Dar says truth. Norma Mills is here in the house. Hey, Norma. Glad to see you in the house. Okay, so Charles, this is a very serious issue. And I know that we kind of, oh, Rhonda's in the house. Rhonda says, thank you, Maddie. She says, I was a victim of domestic violence. Thankful that I was able to get out. I will continue to share my daughter's story and support domestic violence. Thank you, Vera Thomas. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Rhonda, for being here. I'm so sorry about the loss of your daughter because of domestic violence. And we have another comment. Good evening, Felicia. I hope you're feeling better. When we talk about these things, sometimes, and I know I can get emotional, and I don't want to do that because this is such a serious issue. And looking at the various signs of domestic violence, getting people to understand there are signs, even when you're dating someone, there are signs that may tell you this is not the person for me. And so, Charles, I know that you know what those signs are, and let's kind of talk about it. I don't want to take, you're my guest, so I don't want to take over my show.
But I want to go back. It's true, not as often, but it is true that there are times when men are the survivors. They're abused as well. But one of the things I'm seeing a lot in the court system, that men have learned how to use the system to their advantage. In other words, they're now filing false claims of abuse so that they can get a one-up when it comes to custody. A lot of times people don't realize that there's a lot of help in the community for persons who have been impacted by domestic violence. As I said earlier, I'm what they call a panel attorney for the Ohio Domestic Violence Network. In other words, they hire lawyers throughout the state to represent survivors. So I have my second office in Columbus, Ohio, because I represent quite a few people out of Columbus. I also represent survivors out of Toledo, out of Dayton, out of Mansfield. I travel all across the state representing survivors of domestic violence. Ohio Domestic Violence Network, they have grant dollars where they assist survivors with lawyers, with housing, with food, with relocation. There's so many things they help people with. In addition, CLASS, which stands for Community Legal Aid Society, they help victims of domestic violence. They have so many organizations, and we need to make sure that people in the community know about the resources so that they can get the help that they need. In addition, if you go to file for a civil protection order, there's no filing fee. The court will not charge you any money to file. My information is there for you to see. If you know somebody who's involved in a situation that they need help getting out, please give them my information. I'll be more than willing to help and to share with them what I can to make sure that they have resources to get out. Domestic violence is a big problem in our community. It's true that like the number two cause of death for kids between the ages of 15 and 24 in the African American community is suicide. And I'm concerned that some of our kids are not just feeling peer pressure, but they're tired of what they see at home and what they experience. So
Amen.
to take it serious, and you have to understand domestic violence is not always physical. A lot of times domestic violence is
Verbal.
mental and verbal. So don't think you're not in a bad situation because you haven't hit you or she haven't hit you. You could be in a bad situation because of the constant mental abuse. Don't overlook it. You must get help. And say to the abuser, you either get help or I'm going to get gone. You know, if you love them, then try to help them, but don't love them more than you love yourself. You have
Absolutely. And and but that's when you're in that type of environment, whether it's verbal, mental, emotional, spiritually, or physically. When you are in those situations, you lose the confidence to even say that kind of thing to a man or to the abuser. And so understanding that there are things that we may have to do even in the midst of being in that environment to get the courage and the strength and the wherewithal to say, hey, I'm not doing this. I can't do this. And especially thinking, I mean, I experienced all of that. I've experienced this, so I know. And I know I would never want a child to feel the hurt from being told things like you're stupid, you're dumb, you're fat, you're ugly, you're nothing, you'll never be anything. Those are just things you don't tell a child. And I would not want any child to have those feelings and not have anyone support and encourage them. And so what kids are seeing in the home clearly impacts on them. And we talk about bullying and all that other kind of stuff, but a lot of that goes on in the home and it impacts. And Maddie says legislation in the state of Ohio, no doubt, is offering these things. And Maddie, Rhonda, she says, why are Ohio's resources so low for domestic violence? Can you answer that question?
That's a very good question. 2 weeks ago, the Ohio Domestic Violence Network was down for their lobby day, and the governor did in this budget increase dollars for domestic violence. So after some lobbying, you're going to see an increase in the upcoming budget for domestic violence. But one of the things we want to do, we want to make sure a lot of those dollars are spent in our community. We want to make sure that our children, our children's children who need those resources are getting those things. And we have to be advocates for, budgetary items for such as domestic violence. When you hear legislation days down in Columbus, you need to be a part of those things. We used to say the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So we have to make sure that we are advocating for those funds. Now, I'll say this too. The numbers look like they do because a lot of the decision makers, they're abusers. They don't believe that domestic violence is real. So they're not going to fund domestic violence because they believe that's just something made up. It's just like a lot of pastors don't preach on Sunday morning about domestic violence because they're abusers. They beat the heart of their wives and their children. So they're not going to preach about domestic violence because they're part of the game. The thing that you have to understand is some of the people who are now abusing people, they were abused as children, and they
Yeah.
never got help. They were never healed.
Yeah.
We think that getting mental health services is a bad thing. It's
No.
really not. All of us have mental health. And just like you take care of your physical health, you take care of medicine for diabetes, you have to get mental health help when you need it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with getting help. But many people don't know. Many of us who are so-called professionals, we use our interest and we're sitting on somebody's couch because we have some things that we need to talk about. So we have to learn that mental health is not a bad word. We have to learn in the African American community that we oftentimes need to get some help.
Yes.
Kind of transitioning just a little bit, the other thing that we need to be concerned about in our community is this pipeline from school to prison.
Yes.
Too
But
many of our, okay, go ahead.
before you do that, though, because that's another issue, but we have a question here regarding elder abuse. And I was wondering if there, because that ties in with abuse, abusiveness. So I'm not, she's saying, is abuse of the elder a matter you handled? That's what she's asking.
It is. I said at the beginning, I most of my practice is family law, so I deal with elderly issues, whether it's a state probate, elder abuse, domestic violence, grandparents' rights, custody, divorce, dissolution, legal separation. All those things we cover here in our office, we work hard to get the results that's best for families. So yes,
Okay.
that is the issue that we handle.
Okay. Well, I wanted to address that before we moved on to the pipeline. So you want to touch on that. And also, Maddie says that it is a great thing, mental health. It really is. And, and one of the problems, particularly in the Canton, Akron area, there are not or have not been in the past very many African Americans in those professions. I do hope that things have changed since I've been there. Norma says, thank you.
Yeah, I forgot the name of the one mental health firm they have here in Akron. It's ran by the pastor from Mount Calvary Baptist Church, but it's an African American agency. So I think they're doing a pretty good job here in Akron. Um, the pipeline from school to prison, they criminalize our children as early as kindergarten. They take them out of the schools in handcuffs, and the research says you can predict the number of prisons that's going to be built by looking at the number of African American boys who are being suspended by the first grade. Now, I will tell you, we have to work on that on two fronts. There is a problem with Jim Crow when it comes to our children in schools, but at the same time, there are some issues in our homes. My wife is a kindergarten teacher in a public school, and some of the things she encounters with kids who are 5 years old is just amazing. We have to do a better job at parenting and raising our children. So I
Absolutely.
anyone to believe that racism is our only issue. It's our major issue, but it's not our only issue. We
Amen.
raise our young people up to be responsible and respectful. They start out, with a deficit because of the color of their skin. So it's not helpful when we don't train them and teach them that they have to be respectful. Oftentimes on Facebook, on YouTube, on Snapchat, on Twitter, we laugh when little JJ was about 2 years old saying bad words.
Oh,
The problem is they're not going to tolerate that in school. And the more little JJ get kicked out of school, the more likely he's going to get a prison number. So we have to work on both fronts. We have to do our part, and then we have to make sure that we stand up and advocate for our children.
absolutely. And
Uh,
that is why I have developed this program, Instilling Greatness in Myself and My Children. In fact, I've got a workshop coming up on November 6th. And I'm asking you guys to come on Clubhouse tonight and let's talk about let's continue the conversation. And Charles, if you can come on Clubhouse tonight so that we can continue this conversation, that would be awesome. And I substitute taught here in Akron. I substitute taught in Akron and Kentucky and all that. But when I came here to Atlanta and walked into a first grade class where little boys were calling little girls the B word and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, because they have changed. Things have changed. And kids are picking up on what they're cursing. There was just on Clubhouse yesterday, there was a whole room on cursing and people not understanding the impact that cursing has. And I remember being at a lady's house. She was raising two grandkids, 2 and 3 years old, and she cursed like a sailor. And I told her, when these kids start school and they're cursing at the teachers, you don't have a leg to stand on. They're only doing what they see you do. And so all of these things that we're talking about right now is so critical. We have got to take responsibility for a lot of things that are happening with our children in in our society. If we can instill greatness in our kids, if we can uplift them, encourage them, inspire them, and educate them. Speaking of which, there was a homeschooling for excellence workshop and a conference, a 3-day conference on homeschooling. And I'm telling you, my listening audience, if you got kids that are in school, you might want to look at this conference. It's going to be running 24/7. You need to look at this conference because there was just a wealth of information and ways that parents can educate their kids at home themselves. Let me see what other people are saying here. Who is okay? Okay. Sholtra Mills is saying, good evening, Rhonda Mackey, sister friend. There every year, take back the night. Yes, take back the night. Yes, we are a movement to stop this generational curse. And it is a curse. It is a curse. And let's see, Darlene says, I agree with we have to be better and do better. However, we need more representation for our children. A lot of these teachers don't understand our culture and don't care. Very, very, very true. That is why homeschooling has grown exponentially because of how our school systems are not effectively educating children. And so I'm telling you, you guys need to check out that 3-day conference. I was glued to my seat and I don't even have any kids other than my grandkids that aren't even with me. All right. So, yes, ma'am. Okay.
So one of the things Dar said is true, and I talked about this earlier, this thing that is called unconscious bias, and sometimes it's conscious. The bottom line is the research says that white police officers, white teachers, they say that Black children, as I said earlier, as young as 5, appear more adult and more grown than a 5-year-old white child. They look more guilty. So they deal with our children based on their unconscious and their conscious bias. And as I said earlier, we continue to elect leaders in our community that's been selected by the masses, who oftentimes do not represent what's best for us and our children. It was once said that all my skin folk ain't my kinfolk. You know, we have to get out of this habit of just electing Black people just to have a Black face on the school board or to have a Black face downtown on the city council. We have to start electing people that we're going to hold accountable. Too often, they don't hire enough teachers who look like our children. They don't hire enough people that works in the courts at the district office. So yes, we do have to become better advocates, and we have to start holding our Black organizations accountable. The truth of the matter, there are many organizations that I don't spend a lot of time hanging with, because when I look at their outcomes and their output, when I look at their mission, it doesn't align with what I believe. So I oftentimes find myself standing up fighting for my people, because their lives matter to me. So when we say Black Lives Matter, we have to ask ourselves, what do we mean? And does all Black lives matter? And if they do, then we have to govern ourselves accordingly, making sure that we are advocating for our people.
Absolutely. And this is such a touching show for me right now, because we are in so much pain. We've got so much going on, and COVID and that kind of stuff did not help. But we've got so many issues that we need to address within our communities. And you being here and shedding light on so much is so important. And oh my
I
God.
can tell you, when it comes to advocating for our people, I tell young lawyers all the time, you have to walk with the law when you go. I was down in Canton on a family law case with this Black gentleman trying to get his grandchild at the end of last year. And the judge was nasty and out of control. And I said to him, I said, wait a minute. I said, I've been practicing law 22 years, and I've never had anybody to talk to me that way. I said, you are a lawyer like me, sitting in a black robe, who have to answer the Supreme Court just like I do. I said, you have to be able to behave better than that.
And what was his response?
Like he saw a ghost. I was in front of him last week. He was totally different. And the lawyers on the other side was feeling cocky because they were Canton lawyers and I was from Akron. But I told my clients, don't be nervous, because there's no such thing as a Canton or Akron lawyer. I said, all of us are licensed by the Ohio Supreme Court. So when we got into the hearing, the young white lawyer was talking about, well, this is not fair, it's not right. I said, well, the Ohio Supreme Court says in Bernstein in a 2020 case, ABCD, the judge sitting there shaking his head and gave me every doggone thing I want. I didn't have to raise my voice. He remembered the last time that I schooled him that he had a license like me, and I was going to be respected, and I was going to respect him. So this time when I was in Canton before this same judge, he knew how to behave. And I'm happy to report that he's not running for re-election, so he's going to his last year this time. But we have to make sure when we advocate, we do not cow down. I'm not being braggadocious, but when I walk into the room, I'm confident in myself. I've studied. I've done my homework. I know the law. I made a commitment to justice and to my client, and I represent them to the best of my ability. Same thing happened once. I went to a school where they was kicking. It's in Easton. It's at down near Easton Mall is where my Columbus office is. But I went to a meeting with this child that was trying to kick out of school. And they had the hearing, and I went in, and I dealing with the law and everything. And after I left, before I get to my office, I got a text from the hearing officer, and she said, please, sir, keep doing what you're doing. She said, if it wasn't for you here today, this kid would have been kicked out. She said they knew before you advocated for him that he did not deserve to be kicked out of school. So the bottom line is, Dar's right. We have to show up. If you hear that a child have an expulsion hearing or a suspension hearing, get in touch with me or somebody that they might have representation. Even if they don't have a lawyer, go with them, because they need somebody to encourage them when they're hearing all this crazy stuff about their children. If you have a special ed child or grandchild, there's even other rules, and they have to play by these rules. I remember asking once, I said, this child has an IEP. What interventions have you given this child? I said, the federal government requires that because the child has an IEP, he's entitled to interventions. What interventions are in place? None. I said, well, this hearing is over. you are in violation of the federal laws that give you funding in your school. Is it over? You need to continue. So yeah, you have to advocate for your children in the schoolhouse, in the courthouse, even in the jailhouse. You cannot stop being an advocate for your children.
And you can also consider homeschooling your kids. You can consider homeschooling your kids. This conference showed the success of homeschooling where it did not hamper them playing sports, it did not hamper them getting involved in all kinds of things, and also could, in fact, start college while in homeschooling. And there were several. I mean, just go check out the conference. It's called Homeschooling with Excellence. I'm telling you, if you're a parent, especially parents of color, you might want to really look at this. I'm telling you, that way we won't have to deal with the injustices and the discrepancies and all of the things that we're dealing with where our kids are concerned. Let me see another comment. Norma says, give us your phone number in Akron or Columbus. Did I put your number in the screen?
Yeah, I think it's going through there.
Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and say it slowly so they can write it down, and
Yes.
I'll put it in the chat.
So
What is it?
Number is 330-665-0910.
Okay, 330-665-5910.
Correct.
And that's the Canton number.
I know that is the Akron number.
Oh, I meant Akron. I'm sorry. I know you don't live in Canton. Okay, Akron, and then what's the Columbus number?
If you dial that number, it rings both Akron and Columbus.
Okay. Again, that number is 330-665.
0910.
Okay, I messed up. 0910. Okay, I'm putting it in the chat, so go ahead and copy it. All right, all right. Someone else put it in the chat for me as well. Thank you, DJ Grady Baby Radio. Okay, okay. Yes, DJ Grady Baby Radio is on, and he is the owner of this platform, allowing so many to come and share. All right. Well, God, do any of you have any other questions that you want to ask as we're continuing to talk about? We've talked about domestic violence. We've talked about the pipeline from school to jail. We've talked about education. We've talked, okay. One of the questions I want to ask you, tell me, in terms of your organization, your nonprofit, can you tell me a little more about what's going on with that?
So the name of our organization is Children and Families Advocacy Programs. And what we seek to do is to help people who cannot always afford regular price legal services. So we try to assist them in certain situations, whether it's a situation with your child in school, whether it's a situation where the court's saying that you got to have supervised visits. Well, supervised visits cost money. And many times people can't afford to pay, so they can't have visits. So we try to assist in making sure that people who have to have supervised visits, that they can have those visits take place. So we also work on trying to make sure that people who have IEPs, we go to meetings to support and advocate for them. Again, these are services sometimes that our people cannot afford. So we try to make sure that they're able to have those things.
Now, a lot of times people don't understand what IEP is. So do you want to explain what an IEP is?
An IEP stands for Individualized Educational Plan. And what the federal government requires of kids who have, even adults who have disabilities, whether it's a learning disability or mental disability, they are entitled to accommodations. So there are some kids who have IEPs just because they have speech issues. There's others who have behavior issues, others who have other issues that they need accommodations in order to do well. So if they need more time for their tests, or if they need more time with studying, the law requires that the school district creates a plan to give them what they need. Now, there's this thing that's also called child fine. From the time a child is a year and a half, the federal government requires school districts to go out through the community and find kids who have these issues. And they began to prepare them as early as 18 months, preparing them for school. So by the time they're 2 years old, they get to start preschool. They get a head start, and the government has to pay for it, whether it's speech, whether it's mental, or whatever the case might be. And so by the time they reach kindergarten, they're almost on the same page as what we call a typical kid. And in that program that they have, each school district has it, they have typical kids to help those other kids get caught up. So we need to make sure that our children are getting the help that they need and the government provides for them.
Amen. So understanding those, and I know a lot of people knew what IEP was, but some people may not have. And so giving those acronyms and the definitions for them, very important. So, oh my God, any other questions out here before? Okay, the question. Oh, how do you determine an IEP? Okay.
Well, each school has a coordinator for special education. So if parents think that their children need help, then they can make the request. Sometimes teachers are able to make the request based on what's happening in the classroom. And sometimes children's medical providers will make the request that they are screened to see if they qualify for an IEP. Now, sometimes kids won't qualify for an IEP because just a little more help, they'll be okay. But that doesn't disqualify them for what is called a 504 plan. So a 504 plan is very similar to an IEP, but it also allows for accommodation. So say your child have a bladder problem, and they need to go to the bathroom more often than the other kids in the classroom. Well, if you give them a 504 plan, then the teacher can't say, no, you can't go. That 504 plan says when the child needs to go to the bathroom, the child's able to go. So if the child has diabetes and it needs to take orange juice several times a day, well, the 504 plan says that the child can leave the classroom to take care of their medical problem. But there are several instruments that are there to be utilized to help our kids stay on track educationally and academically.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Charles, we kind of, God works in mysterious ways, and he led and directed this show tonight because and we're talking about empowering, we're talking about instilling greatness, we're talking about uplifting our children, we're talking about recognizing the signs of abuse. I do want to kind of talk about that for a minute because we didn't really touch on that. Signs of abuse. 1, belittling. I remember breaking up with a guy because he called me a knucklehead. And I figured, well, if you call me a knucklehead today, you get mad at me and I'm going to be something else tomorrow. So I'm done. Also, bullying, controlling, being controlling, questioning, where you been, who you been with, all that kind of stuff. You can throw in some stuff too, Charles.
Well, the main thing is controlling, whether it's your time and space, or whether it's money, bullying, verbal abuse, hitting, shoving, threatening, all those things. But don't ignore the signs, and make sure you tell people not to ignore the signs. And one of the last things I want to say, this is so critical. Oftentimes I get calls from people saying, could you come to the nursing home? Could you come to the hospital? My mom needs to do a will. My mom needs a power of attorney. Well, wills require a certain mental capacity. And if you wait to the last minute, there's nothing I can do if your mom or your dad or your sister don't have the capacity to know what they're giving away in the will. And same with power of attorney. If it's at the last minute, there's nothing I can do because they don't have the mental capacity to give you the power. If that happens, then you have to go to probate court to ask them to appoint your guardian, and that's a much longer process and it's a more expensive process. I want to encourage African Americans to do your homework. Make sure you either have a will or a trust, that you have a durable power of attorney or healthcare power of attorney. Everybody need these things. I don't care if you think you don't have anything. You still need to have these things in place. You need to know why you're healthy, who you want to make certain decisions for you if you can't make those decisions for yourself. And it's critical that we do that. And I tell young parents all the time, and even some folk who in their 50s, early 60s, don't just think about a will, consider a trust. If you have a trust and you've had your trust for at least 5 years and you've placed your house in that trust and you have to go to the nursing home cannot take your house because it's in your trust and it's been there for 5 years. So you can go to the nursing home without worrying about them taking your house. And if you need to qualify for Medicaid or Medicare, your house will not count as an asset because it's already in the trust. So I want to encourage my people to make sure you do some estate planning because it's very, very important. When you don't plan, then the probate judge have the duty and responsibility of deciding what's going to happen to your things after something happened to you. I thank you for your time, and my time is up. But please, if you have any other questions, my contact information is there. My email address is kind of simple. It's my name. It's charles.tyler@tylerlawoffice.com. charles.tyler@tylerlawoffice.com.
And I just want to comment, I want to share a couple of comments that we have out here. All right, Ladrad said, great information. Rhonda says you are touching so many things. Rhonda says, thank you so much. Norma says, excellent show. Well, listen, thank you guys. I want to give a couple of announcements before we go. One, I would like for you to join me on Clubhouse tonight at 9:30 in the Click to Cash room. I have a room called Instilling Greatness in Myself and My Children. I want you to come and let's continue this kind of conversation. Rhonda says the information about trust was needed. Yes. And also there are 2 conferences that are free that are going on this week. The first one is the Comeback Champion Summit. And I'm telling you, it's running from morning until night. I am one of the speakers. I was on today. I didn't even get a chance to look at it because I'm doing other things. But I want to encourage you, if you want to be educated on all kinds of things, you really want to jump on these free online conferences. Again, the Comeback Champion Summit. Put that in your browser and go to it. The other one is Sisters Leader Conference, and that conference runs on the 29th and 30th. The Comeback Summit Conference is running from the 26th through the 30th. So I really want you to get educated, be informed, learn more. There may be some things that you glean from these things that may help you with your business, may help you with your health, may help you with your family, may help you with other areas of your life. So please, Comeback Champion Summit and Leader Sister Summit. All right. And also, Charles, I just want to thank you. And if you can come to the Clubhouse room with me tonight, I think that would be awesome. It's at 9:30. Thank you, Maddie. Maddie said, great show, Vera. And you guys share, click, and subscribe to my show, please. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, Rhonda, I want to tell you, I love your parents. I used to be the presiding elder of the Akron District in Amy Zion Church. So I know your parents and BJ and all of them well. I love them, love them, love them.
Who?
Ron Rice.
Rhonda Rice, okay. And also, I want to send my condolences to the Dorothy Jackson family. Um, Miss Jackson was the first person to give me an opportunity to do training. And I was just told tonight that she passed away yesterday.
Yes.
And so I just want my prayers are with your family. She was an awesome woman and she believed in me and she encouraged me. And she had a lot to do with why I do what I do today. So thank you all for listening and God bless you. And see you on Clubhouse. Or if not, I'll see you next week. God bless. Have a great evening.
The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk.